Hi, and welcome to Whole Soul School and Foundation's Mind, Body, Spirit, Fitness podcast series. My name is Marie Mohler, and I am an author, an intuitive, and the host of today's heart-centered conversation. Joining us again today is Sue Wells. From a very early age, Sue was connected to Source, to the light, to the creator of all that is, and she felt that connection to be her highest purpose in this life. This led her over time to become a meditation teacher, a speaker, a soul journeyer, and an awake and aware consciousness for much of her life. As a student of higher consciousness, meditation, and of what in the bigger picture of life connects all of us in a profound oneness, light, and truth, Sue joins us today from New Zealand to share some of the insights and perspectives that she has gleaned throughout her journey to help enrich your own. So thank you, Sue, for joining us today. Big welcome.
Thank you, Marie. I am really excited that we're able to do this conversation again. I loved the first podcast, and I'm really excited in my heart. I feel that there's a beautiful message that we have to come through today, and I don't know what it's going to be. We know what the topic is, but I'm waiting with bated breath to see what it is that Spirit wants to share through us.
Yes, I am too, and I know our listeners that join with us for these podcasts are as well, because everything in our lives really is an unfoldment. And the more we can learn to trust the process and to let come through us what really desires to come through, the most beautiful magic begins to emerge in our lives, and we start to see that everything orchestrates itself beautifully, and we don't have to work so hard at it. And so maybe that leads into talking a little bit about our topic that we wanted to talk a little bit about today, the concept of surfing the waves of the shifts that many of us are feeling in our lives today. There seems to be an acceleration of energy. There seems to be a lot of, for some people, endings and beginnings, sort of the closeout of some cycles of things they've been, whether it's jobs or relationships or something they've been participating in on some level, that there's just been things that are coming to closure. And there's been, I think, invitations and portals or windows of opportunity that are opening to many people too, in a way that seems to be finding us in the new alignments that are unfolding too. So there's a lot of energy manifesting on the planet and in our everyday lives. We don't just have to look globally into the planet, although we can do that too, but we can actually look at our very own daily lives to see where change and shifts are showing up. What do you think about that, Sue?
Oh, look, I think everybody on the planet right now, in some area of their life, and perhaps in all areas of their life, are experiencing change. And I know that change can come across very suddenly, very dramatically, unexpectedly.
Yeah.
It can be shocking.
Yes.
It can bring you to your knees.
Mm.
And no one is immune to this. So what's going on? Why is this happening? What's this about? My impression and the messages that I've been receiving through from my guides are that we're living at a time of great shift. The planet is reforming and terraforming to create a home for us where we will be able to live in peace and harmony within our own selves, our own beings, and that we're going to be living on a planet which is a place of abundance and expansion. Right now, though, we're going through that shift to make it happen.
Yeah.
Because we're all ready. We all want to be at peace. We all want to experience joy. We all want to be on a planet and in a world and in a life where it doesn't feel like we're struggling. It doesn't feel like we have to effort. We don't have to worry about where we're going to find food or shelter or education or opportunities, where people aren't placed in a space where they're forced to go and do things to earn money so they have somewhere to sleep and somewhere to pay their bills so that they can then have electricity or have food on their table. So at the moment we live on a planet which is out of alignment. People are out of alignment with the opportunities to align with what their hearts are calling them to do. And because of that, it's creating a lot of dissonance. And by dissonance, I mean uncomfortable energy, fractured relationships, emotions coming up, which can create experiences of anger, fear, frustration, injustice. And that's the wave of coming to the surface, everything that is out of balance, everything that is out of place, everything that is not in perfection. So we're all experiencing various levels of that. But behind that, there is a core essence where we are beginning to align to people, places, locations, and opportunities which we are in tune with, that fill us with joy, that fill us with expansion. And so what happens is that as we begin to attract and be attracted to these experiences where we know they fill our heart with joy, everything that is not of that becomes incredibly uncomfortable as our hearts sing to us and call out and say, it's time, it's time, it's time. Now is the hour for us to come together and actually connect with who we are and where we're meant to be. Everything in our life that isn't on the same vibration as that, everything in our life that is not an experience of that, is becoming much more visible. It's getting a lot more louder.
Yes.
And then what happens is that in our hearts, we know we want that. So we make an inner intention or commitment to ourselves to find a way to create more of this experience. Everything in our life that isn't part of that is then forced to either realign with where we're going or it will fall away.
It's so true, Sue. What you're saying is that, you know, when things are hard and things are challenging, or that anger and fear rises up in a particular trigger that we might be feeling, and there are many opportunities in our life today to be triggered, the gift in those emotions is to recognize it, and certainly in my experience, is to recognize that that anger and that trigger and that emotional response is there to inform you that something is out of alignment. So, you know, some part of our conditioning, I think, Sue, is that for a lot of our lives is that anger and fear is part of the culture. So it's almost an expected emotion that we'll feel. And I don't think many of us are raised to look inside anger or look inside fear for what the message might be. We're not even taught, I don't think, the word alignment as children. I don't remember hearing that when I was a child. I certainly remember emotions and some that weren't pleasant, but I don't remember hearing much about alignment that would have made me feel so much better. And I think still as adults today, there are many of us that don't have the language of alignment. And that means if you don't have the language, you don't have the awareness in your consciousness that those emotions are cues to us that simply something is out of alignment. It could be that person, place, thing, or idea that we're responding to is out of alignment with us, or it could mean that something inside us has shifted and is not in alignment with those things or those people or those experiences. And so, you know, I wonder if we can talk a little bit about just your experience in growing your awareness of, you know, is it a pause button that you push when you first started to realize that you could work with emotions like that? I'm having to think, what was the first thing I started to do when I became more conscious of anger as a tool, as a reflection, as kind of a mentor in a way? We don't think of anger as a mentor, but it's almost a teacher to us of what's creating that response. There's some kind of energy or vibration inside us that is uncomfortable with something we're experiencing. And I think there's probably some steps in there that you and I now move through more automatically because we've been doing it some for many years. And please, I want to definitely clarify for our audience, I am not saying that I am above or beyond getting triggered. I've had my own deep triggers in the last few weeks myself. And so, when we open to the language and we gain some of these tools and these skills to be aware, it just means that when more triggers come up, we can recognize them a little easier and maybe interact with them more willingly than in resistance when we don't understand the language and we don't understand the gift that those triggers are. So I guess I said a lot in there, but maybe one of the things we could look at is just talking about when someone's triggered, what do you think is one of the first things you do to just, just get centered in something instead of going full on into the emotion?
Well, I've got a few different thoughts around that, and it
Yeah.
can depend on the type of trigger that's
Yeah.
taking place and where I am at physically. And I mean, where am I? Am I at home? Am I in the office? Am I in the supermarket? Am I
Right.
walking? Am I on the
Yes.
bus?
Right.
So there's
Settings.
so many different scenarios where people, every day, everywhere we go, we are both experiencing, um, emotions through conversation and experiences, both internally and external factors.
Yes.
So there's a real rich conversation beneath this. So
Mhm.
the first place I actually want to go is to talk about how we experience emotion, how we come to label an energetic charge with an identity. So, energy is part of being. We are living in a world which appears to be full of movement. So, the wind blows, we move, and so too our emotions are an
Mhm.
expression of energy flowing through our being. So they're signals and tunes to us about what's going on in our world.
Yes.
So let's take the emotion of fear. This is a really common experience, and we are hardwired in our world to experience what's called fight or flight.
Mm.
And the fight or flight mechanism that has been encoded into our bodies generates an experience of fear that we label as fear. Now, over time, that hardwire has been programmed in such a way that we can be triggered by fight or flight in circumstances that aren't necessarily going to put us at the level of risk as, say, if you were out hunting a bear for food.
Yes.
But the energy response in our body can appear to be exactly the same.
Yeah, it can feel just as intense.
It can feel equally intense, if not more.
Yeah.
Did you know that chemically, when our body emits the chemical reaction to a fear response, it is exactly the same chemicals as excitement and
Oh,
anticipation?
wow. I did not know that. That's incredibly interesting to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, next time you have an experience where you identify the energy being expressed as fear,
Yeah.
if you're able to, just get yourself in a quiet spot and sit there quietly and imagine, allow yourself opportunity to imagine that maybe I'm interpreting as fear is actually excitement, anticipation, aliveness.
Are you still
So
there?
that,
Oh, it
I
just,
am still there.
yeah, it went out just a little bit. If you can say that last sentence
Ah,
again, that
sorry.
last sentence, so I know that, I think we could hear that, that when fear comes up, to pay attention and listen, just quiet for just a moment, and see if you can discern whether the fear you're feeling is excitement or anticipation, because straight away our conditioning or our experience of life might automatically attribute it to fear, but it could be the others. It could be excitement or anticipation, which would take us in a different direction in our response if we could understand that.
Yes. So what I'm actually inviting people to explore is that your mental interpretation of the energy, which you interpret as fear,
Yeah.
could in fact be something else. But
Yeah.
because you are hardwired to interpret that
Yes.
reaction and that vibrational reaction as fear, you automatically switch in that mode as a form of self-protection and self-worth, or protecting your being from harm. So be completely open and completely allow for the opportunity for your body to allow that chemical reaction to take place and to move through, and the vibrations and energy that come with that, and allow for the potential to be that actually it's a seed of self excitement.
Yeah.
Now, saying that you are put yourself at personal risk. You
Yes.
know, if you are in a situation where you are potentially at risk of being harmed, listen and
Yes.
do what you need to do. I'm talking about all the situations in life that we all encounter every day where something is triggered and we have an experience that we interpret as fear. They're the spaces, they're the opportunities where we can actually just allow ourselves a moment to be with that and allow for the possibility that what you are interpreting here could in fact be an experience of excitement
Mm.
and anticipation.
Mm.
And they're actually cues for us for where there is an opportunity to step beyond a personal limitation in our beliefs, in our behaviors, in our thoughts, to experience something new in our life.
Mm.
Something that's actually going to expand and open us up to joy and love, and completely transform something that could be scary, to see something which can actually expand ourselves and our world
Mm.
further.
Wow, that's really profound. Um, to feel like inside us, to be able to pause and take that moment, take that breath, instead of going directly into the response that we often might do as an automatic or on autopilot because of the instinct of the fight or flight. But if we can pause long enough to interpret what that chemical signal might be saying a little differently, when appropriate, it could be informing us about something that we may even desire in a different way than something we actually fear.
Yes.
Um,
So that alone, playing with just that alone, can create a whole new experience of life. And
yes,
it's like everything else, just practice it, be really gentle with yourself, you know, don't have an expectation that every time you have the experience of fear come up that you'll remember to play with this exercise. But
yes,
just when you are aware, when you do see it and you have the opportunity, just play and see what happens, see where it takes you.
yes. That's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. You know, it is these are the stepping stones in gaining awareness. I think when we can pause what our automatic responses are long enough to allow, I don't know if it's another filter or just a different filter, but I remember early on, Sue, in my journey when I was becoming more aware and feeling like I had more choice in how I was responding to my environment and how I was responding and creating my life. That was a very new concept to me at the time. And it does, I know that first step is to instill that pause moment to, and I think we talked about this on the first podcast, the concept of being a witness observer. Even if you delayed by about 2 to 5 seconds a response, it gives you just a little bit of time to, instead of saying or reacting with the first thing that wants to come out of your mouth, even those few seconds might actually reroute your circuitry, where you can enter that witness observer state and you can see, from a less personal perspective, of what's actually going on in the situation that you're responding to. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense. And that in turn leads to step 2, which is, now that you've had the opportunity of observing and you can see that you're experiencing the emotion that you label as fear,
Yeah.
allow yourself for that just to pass through. So when we experience emotions and identify them in a particular way, we take hold of, and we either go further into that experience, which then makes it more powerful, or we start to try and analyze it. What's going on? Why am I feeling this way? What am I afraid of? And then we go into a story about it.
Yeah.
So now that you've seen it, you have the opportunity to play with it, allow it to pass through you. So you just it moving through you, and be aware how you are reacting. Invite your mind to have the opportunity to interpret it differently,
Yeah.
and then allow it to pass through. This
Yeah.
is something that takes practice,
Yeah.
but over time, when you can see what's happening, just allowing yourself to do that will help you move through those experiences more cleanly and come out the other side, and you may in fact see what it was that had triggered it. And that's where the gem lies, because the gem is what tells you what the trigger was. And that's when you can actually play with it more fully.
Right. Exactly. Because when you can find that point of the trigger, you can begin to, again, kind of from that witness observer who's sort of wanting to know yourself better at a deeper level, you can recognize the pattern of something that may show up in something that's similar to that in the future because it's shown up in the past, and you can see your type of response to that kind of trigger. That's where the self-awareness is being born from, is really just taking that time and pausing and giving yourself time to experience that in a different way. And I loved how you said, when we don't pause and we let the natural course of action take place, which runs through most of our social conditioning, we create a story around it, from what is organically happening without any intervention on our part. But if we can actually take a moment and allow that new filtration and that flow, I loved how you talk about the flow. You can let it flow right on through you, and it doesn't have to get all trapped up in your mind-body matrix. Because once we sort of capture the energy, then it's kind of trapped inside us, and it either needs to come up and out in an outburst, or it goes down and in, and we take it as something that increases our self-doubt or increases the fear we were feeling, or we stew about the anger a little bit longer and we create a soup with it inside us. So also part of that, where you describe so beautifully of taking that pause and allowing ourselves to take a breath and allow ourselves to recognize what our circuitry is actually doing in response to what we're experiencing, we do have an opportunity to write a new story, to have a new experience, and to, by letting it flow through us, is part of the mechanism of creating a different experience for ourselves, of ourselves.
Ex- mm, mm. Yes, exactly, exactly. And one of the other tools I play with that is, if something is coming up, like an expression which you could interpret as fear, and I see it and I allow it to be there and it flows through,
Mm.
sometimes actually just changing your activity
Mm.
to a different topic, to a different thing, can help that shift take place. It's a really, really simple, really practical tool. And it is dependent on where you are happening, where you are at with your thoughts. But if you are able to create a space where you can observe that you are witnessing, that you are having this experience, and that you are identifying something as a particular emotion, such as fear, and allow yourself to be open to the potential that it's actually something else, that
Yeah.
it could in fact be anticipation or excitement, you then create a space for it to move through you. That space for it to move through you has taken place, and at that moment, change your activity. Put your attention onto something completely different. So you may have been focusing inwards as you do this. At that moment, get up and put the kettle on, or go over and open a book. Something that puts your attention to another place will then enable the completion of that release to flow through you. And you may realize 5 minutes later that you've even forgotten you were having that emotion.
That is so well said. I thought of two things when you were sharing that tool, which I think is incredibly helpful for me, for sure, to take that one in, because I don't know that I consciously had thought. I might intuitively create some movement, but I don't think I've ever consciously decided to do that. Um, One of the things that I wanted to say was, in the way that you're talking, that these triggers of emotion can then become productive for us. They can be working for us when we can start to recognize that they really actually want to partner with us, not necessarily in the expression of them, but in the understanding of them. And so I
Mm.
think when we can actually extract the gems and the blessings in those difficult or unpleasant or challenging moments in all of our lives that we've all had at some point or another, and we may likely have again, um, it really helps to sort of shift in perspective, to recognize this is an opportunity for me to grow. This is an opportunity for me to learn. I always think about when I was pregnant with my kids, and towards the end of the pregnancies, the doctors were always, informing me as a patient to recognize there are productive contractions and there are unproductive contractions, but you're going to have contractions either way, right? And there's some basically some are going to be useful to you, and some are just cueing your system that something's coming, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
And
a great story.
right. And so
Yes.
I think about emotions perhaps in this conversation in the same way, that there are going to be emotions and they are going to flow through all of us. And if we can change our create a shift in perspective inside ourselves, where we're willing to look at that from that witness observer perspective, and we're willing to see these emotions that are definitely trying to flow through, we can watch what happens sometimes as a witness observer and just see some of those emotions come in. We don't do anything different, and they do get trapped inside us. And if we don't get up and put the kettle on, or we don't get up and create some movement, just notice what that feels like. Notice whether you feel good. Notice whether you like what you're feeling. Notice um, what you might do differently next time. And or another option is to let that energy come through, because it's still going to be coming, and make the choice in the moment, because that's where our true power is when we actually have practiced enough of the witnessing and the observing to start to take a different action when the same trigger comes up in our life again. And so, sometimes we do need to see that 1, 2, 3, 4 times before we recognize it and say, wait, I've seen this happen many times before. And today I'm going to make a new choice. If you're interacting with another person, you don't have to say all this out loud. This can be all something that's going on inside yourself, because you've done the rehearsal for this moment. You've already rehearsed this a few other times before, and you may be gaining some confidence to try a different response or to create that movement that you're talking about. Something to shift that energy and move it differently than the course of action or your typical response to things of that nature. And so I just really felt that that we can make this messaging system that's going on in our electrical system and in our energy system, it can always be working for us if we have the perspective that it's working for us. If we don't have any perspective or language at all, emotions can be very inconvenient. They can be very challenging. They can show up in a way that we didn't expect that potency about a particular trigger or issue. And with the energies shifting on the planet the way they are, and new stressors that seem to enter our human lives every day, there is this sense of pressure or a certain kind of intensity on the planet at this time. So there will be plenty of triggers to move through us and to give us an opportunity to practice this shift in perspective, instead of it being an enemy that we're trying to vanquish. I don't know if some people approach their emotions like that, but if you've seen a pattern rise up in yourself enough times, you might be getting pretty frustrated with it by now. If that's happening, then that's a trigger that isn't getting your attention to create this shift in perspective. And maybe you're on this call just to hear that one nugget of insight, that it's actually communicating with you and getting louder until you listen. But when you listen, recognize, observe it, and make some of these choices that Sue is talking about to create that movement, or create that pause and recognize your inner chemistry of what is it really communicating to you, and to choose by your response another story. Right? We're all being given an opportunity. So I just want to go back and say that again. For some people, triggers of emotions might feel like it's something that's against you or working against you or keeps somehow defeating you in some way. That's a pretty intense emotion. But we can still take this pause. We can still use some of these tools and create that movement. For some people, if it's milder, you might start with those milder triggers and work your way up to working on the bigger ones, just knowing that you're approximating that better feeling perspective and shifting the story that you're telling yourself about those things. And over time, the story of your life will change, because life is a series of experiences, and experiences are filled with emotion. So when we learn to regulate and recognize the value of our emotion as a communication system with ourselves, we can actually start to create more of the experiences we want to be having, as we shift away through our responses to those emotions, from the things we really don't want. And I know that was a lot to say in there, but a simple little tool that I also wanted to tack on the end of Sue's was where you talked about one of those tools is, if you are being triggered, you can actually just get up and create some movement. And, whether you walk outside, or you let the dog outside, or you pet your cat, or you talk to one of your kids, or there's a million small little things that we can do. And I was surprised at a profound insight. I went to see a massage therapist in the last, at least the last 6 months, for a shoulder issue I was having. And there was tension in my shoulder. And the massage therapist talked about, she was learning in some modalities about trauma healing, or healing, childhood what would be the word? Just trauma, just things that we're carrying that's unhealed, energy that's unhealed in our body, that our tissues in our bodies hold on to that sometimes. And she said to me, sometimes if you notice that you're carrying any tension in your body, even if you don't even move, like go put on the tea kettle, you can simply stand in the same place and wiggle your fingers or wiggle your toes inside your shoes. So I thought that was a really creative way of creating movement in any moment, that you could be in a hectic office, or there could be, a particularly stressful situation going on at a family reunion where there's lots of energy brewing about and there's lots of triggers, or it could be a holiday meal with family. There's a lot of ways that we can get triggered. I'm just naming a few. But what a brilliant way that we could be even standing in place, but create that wiggling movement that is actually dissipating some of that extra energy that our body's feeling. And I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying, which is to create just a little bit of movement can go a long way in shifting your perspective and shifting your response to something that could be otherwise extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. And it was so rich, everything that you shared there, and practical as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
building on that,
Yeah.
that's one tool. There are other tools as well
Yeah.
related to emotion and how we experience and how we move through life. And as we said, the topic of conversation today is
Yeah.
surfing the wave of reality, so that we come out the other side not feeling like we've been dumped and drowned, but that
Yes.
we've landed safely on the shoreline.
Yes.
And this is an everyday experience on the planet right now. There are big waves and there are little choppy waves and there are calm seas.
Yes.
So bringing our attention through to that,
Mm.
in terms of working with our bodies and our emotions and our thoughts,
Yeah.
really the essence of where we're coming to is actually about our relationship with ourselves.
Mm.
We don't get to control the circumstances of our lives. There are times when it can feel like we can control the circumstances of our lives because we create structure that
Mm.
gives an impression of control. But
Mm.
the truth is, we have no control. We don't know what's going to happen in the next moment. We can plan for the next moment. We can have an intention for the next moment, but we cannot control the next moment.
Mm.
So, this can be one of the primary reasons that we have triggers which we interpret as emotions.
Mm.
It's really important at this point on the planet for all of us to begin creating a stronger relationship with our own being, a healthier relationship with our bodies, our minds, our emotions, and our souls.
Mm.
Often when emotions come up that are uncomfortable for us, that are disturbing, particularly when we experience frustration or anger or even grief, the immediate reaction can be to challenge ourselves about that, challenge our bodies about what's happening, challenge our emotions or our minds. And in fact, the real gem in the emotion that's coming up is to see the opportunity for you to reconnect with a part of your body and your being that is experiencing emotional hurt or pain,
Mm.
and to heal that part of you. So here's a kind of a practical example. Something happened a couple of days ago, and I realized that I was feeling the expression of anger.
Mm.
And I allowed myself to be aware of that emotion and explored a little bit about what was triggering that. And in doing so, I registered that there was a part of me that was feeling really vulnerable and alone.
Mm.
And so I used the tool of gifting myself unconditional love and nurturing. And I spoke to myself and I said, I'm really sorry that you are having this experience. I'm really sorry that you feel unloved and alone. I'm going to offer you all of my nurturing, all of my love, and all of my support. And it was that simple.
Mm.
Now, I'm experienced at using that kind of technique. So my reaction at that time was one of an expansion of heart and self-love and self-worth. And some residue grief came through, sadness.
Mm.
If you're new at using a technique like that, you may find that other powerful emotions come to the surface as part of that. I just want people to know right now that if that happens, it's okay. Because what you're doing is you're tuning into yourself, into your own core essence, and you're acknowledging the value of who you are as a person, and that you are loved and you are loving. I think that's a really, really powerful tool for all of us. And I believe that it's something that should be and can be applied to our body on every level. So our physical body, our emotional body, our mental mind, and also our spiritual being. And, I'm very conscious of how easy it is to be angry with ourselves when things don't go to plan, to become angry with our bodies, to become angry with our minds. And that's a very real experience for people. And I just want everyone out there to know that there is another choice, there is another option. And the really critical part of this is just be, when this happens, just be as gentle as you possibly can be with yourself. Because
Mm.
identifying and acknowledging that you are experiencing hurt and pain can actually be a trigger for what I would label as self-violence, which is, berating yourself, being angry towards yourself, and blaming yourself for something which in reality you probably don't have any control over.
Mm. Wow. Just listening to you in that wonderful energetic space that I know you have a lot of practice, and you've used as a tool in your life in many ways. Just for our listeners and for myself included, it was lovely just to be in that experience of the energy you bring through for yourself. That's an option and offering for each one of us to do the same. And it's interesting when you talked about if that anger comes up and we can be instead choose to be gentle with ourselves. The word also compassion came up too. I think the remedy to the anger and the fear is those gentler emotions, when we can summon that inside ourselves and at least be able to be willing to bring in a gentleness or a compassionate, soothing energy for ourselves, that understands that some days are just hard. Some circumstances are very challenging. Our world is constantly spinning these days. There's a lot required of us just to be here, just to be upright and breathing is quite a task on the planet as it is today, and we aren't really taught from a very early age these skills to engage in self-care. So I think we're more practiced at the angrier, or I don't know if it's aggressive, I'm not quite sure what the emotion would be, Sue, but we're much more oriented towards coming up with a power response to deal with our discomfort than we are a gentle response. What do you think about that?
don't know that I ever actually have thought about that before. So it's really interesting that you should raise it.
Leave it to me to ask a question.
Good. I think you're right. I think that we are very masculine dominated in our society. And so I think we're very practiced at masculine types of approaches and responses to situations. And there is a certain amount of healthiness in that. But I do feel that we are less experienced and less honoring of feminine attributes, which can counterbalance and bring harmony to those more power orientated or active components.
Yeah.
So the invitation to be gentle with ourselves is inviting us to actually go back into that space of pausing and becoming the observer and allowing ourselves to be kind and gentle rather than taking a power position. I'm interested in knowing more about what your interpretation of power responses are.
That's an interesting question. You know, I think where you started the conversation talking about our chemistry and the fight or flight response, I do think we have a certain wiring inside ourselves to respond to things that would threaten our survival. I think it's through a great deal of ancestral conditioning, and now more so cultural conditioning, that we do engage the more masculine aspects of our responses to anything that makes us afraid. And I think so. Maybe to answer your question about how I view power and also as it connects to emotion, I think we have a very male identified response to fear and emotion. And whether it's to suppress it, as in like putting out a fire, whether it's to control it or manipulate it, whether it's to sort of let it rage on, those are very masculine responses to real life threats that I think deep in our ancestry, and maybe even today, I'm sure some people can attest to this, that there are real threats to our physical well-being. But I think that's been at the expense, as you said, of the feminine that has been pushed way aside in our cultural awareness as a global humanity, as a global collective. We are not presently skilled at expressing our feminine traits, and maybe both of us want to take a moment and express how we see and feel the divine feminine. I think you will probably have a very lovely, eloquent description of that. I'm a feeler by nature and an intuitive and an empath, and so my descriptions come from a place of feeling, which would also be more of the feminine. And the feminine is this fluid, gentle, and connected to everything. It's where the oneness exists. It's where everything is somehow orchestrating and working itself perfectly. The feminine is our faith. The feminine is our trust. The feminine knows that everything's okay, even when things can look terribly not okay. The feminine has that ability to believe the goodness and the light, even in the worst of circumstances. And so say we're being cut off, somebody cuts us off in traffic, and that triggers an emotion. In our culture, I think it's just uncommon. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, but I think a lot of people have been conditioned to express the more male protective power types of responses to that versus the feminine responses, which might be more compassionate that the person who just did that might be having a very rough day, or even just the awareness that we don't even know the kind of day at all that the person who just did that is having. That's that sense of interconnectivity that neutralizes the masculine's kind of unbalanced sense of power to suppress or to act out the feelings that you just experienced when you were cut off, or you felt like you were mistreated, or something was an injustice. Our filters of how we even are perceiving that experience, or any experience in our life, I think are very male dominated in our culture. I'm not saying that's true for everyone, but I'm saying as a culture, we tend to, it's been modeled for us for many generations to respond in this way. And it is the uncommon experience I think we've seen, is to take that pause to understand that there's a story going on in our journey that day, and there's a story going on in the journey of the person we're interacting with on some level. And that's the feminine, and that's the wisdom of the sacred divine feminine that I think is being summoned by a world right now that's so out of balance that it only often chooses power responses to particular stressors. And so that's kind of a longer answer, but my experience is we're moving from a place of unbalanced power into inviting our wiser, more feminine traits that allow compassion and perspective and faith and trust, and the awareness of ourselves as connected to everyone and everything, to also inform the response that we might be having to any particular situation. And when you have the male's ability to respond with strength, coupled with the feminine's awareness of everything being interconnected and having compassion and love for that interconnectedness, we'd be having an entirely different conversation, and we'd be experiencing a very different world.
Mm. Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very much so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel that as we ride the waves that are happening on the planet now, personally and collectively, some of those waves appear to be ones that we're surfing,
Mm.
yet others feel like they're buster waves. They're coming in hard and fast from an unexpected direction, kind of like a rogue wave.
Mm.
And it feels at odds. And when that happens, I know for myself that that brings up a lot of energy and emotion, which is uncomfortable, which can be interpreted as things like anger and fear and hurt and distrust. It can blindside me, and I'm sure it can blindside other people as well.
Yeah.
It can take you by surprise.
Yes.
They're the situations that we're wanting to look at today about how can we surf those waves? What's going on? What can we do with this? Because as you've just said, Marie, historically, and I think it is encoded into us, the way we do tend to respond to that is very much of the masculine trait, combined with the encoding of fight or flight.
Yes.
And that creates the potential for aggression, which of course then creates separation, which in turn then ferments more of those emotions and feelings and thoughts which are dis-ease. So we do not feel at ease, we feel dis-ease.
Yes.
And
they have a way of fueling that versus neutralizing that, so that very powerful male energy, if we go down that path, has a way of igniting further the path of separation.
Yes, definitely. And so where we're coming to, or where I'm coming to with this, is that embracing and tuning into our own divine feminine aspects actually enables us to harmonize and balance that. So you have the balance of both. You have the feminine coming through, which is all your collaborative,
Yes.
gentle, loving, intuitive, collaborative community, cooperation, timelessness, aspects,
Mm-hmm.
which balances out the rigid, structured, analytical, logical responses.
Yes. Yes. And you need both. We absolutely need both in our world today. Um, but it's so powerful to see our world in the grandest expression of these larger waves you're describing, that can also show up in our personal lives. But we just have to look around the planet at some level and see that the male is crying out for its partner. It is crying out for its partner, and it wants assistance because it can't fight the fires anymore, right? What it's been doing for centuries is not working. And that's that part of that witness observer we were talking about throughout this podcast, is to be able to simply witness the fiery energy that's going round this planet, and even potentially in our own personal lives, and recognize that as a fire that is a masculine energy that is out of its skill set. It doesn't have anything more to put out that fire than more of the same. But that's where this concept and really this energy of sacred partnership, and I think where you were speaking a little bit before, Sue, is this relationship with ourself. Because when we have not been in relationship with ourself, then we have not been aware that there is, every single one of us has these masculine aspects and traits. They're soul traits. They're not gender traits necessarily. And the same thing is true, is that every single one of us, regardless of the gender we identify with, has these feminine traits. And so it is this sort of marrying of the two, the masculine and the feminine traits inside us, and monitoring for when one of them is unbalanced. There are times that I myself can get into a deep state of timelessness, and that could be trouble when I have to get somewhere on time. There are aspects of both of these parts of our divinity, that, if left unchecked, can leave us missing out or causing a great deal of harm. And so part of what we're talking about today, really underneath this concept of surfing the waves and surfing the heat of some of the shifts on the planet right now, that can be soft, gentle waves, but they're still waves, or these massive waves, is this call to connect inside ourselves with a greater awareness of balance. And when you can summon in these soul skills, that I call them, of the feminine, that instills more of the patience and pauses and things that allow a greater flow and a greater listening inside, and a greater faith and trust in a larger process to inform what's going on. And you have a willing masculine side that's ready and able to take action, but it's looking to be informed by the feminine energy. And what's been happening is that the male energy is not getting any information from the female part of us, because the feminine side has been so suppressed inside us individually and on the planet, in all of our systems that govern human behavior, at this point. So in every system you can imagine on the planet, they've been very much masculinized, as we've continued this trajectory. And now here we are at this point where the pendulum's going to swing. And I don't think it's going to swing far, far, far now into just the feminine. It's swinging back into the center, where both have to work together. And what we have to do first is bring in the consciousness that the male is acting unchecked and unbalanced much of the time now. And that it is our feminine that needs to come in into our emotional responses and how we're responding to the triggers and the needs and the requirements of our busy lives in 2019. It really, to move through that successfully with a sense of peace and ease in our bodies, you were talking about, and a sense of wholeness and a sense of knowing who we are. We have to be communicating with both these aspects of ourselves, the male and the female, and taking these pauses and learning how to listen differently and just witnessing. Part of the witness observer is going to be witnessing the male. I would say, I don't know what you would say, Sue, but I would say probably 7 or 8 times out of 10, it's going to be the male rushing in to the male aspects of us to address any situation we're facing. That's going to be probably the first line of defense versus the feminine's first line of listening. That's often its first approach, is to want to hear all sides, want to understand and have compassion for the different perspectives and stories in any situation. We just get to witness who's talking through you. Is it your male aspects? Is it your feminine side? Or are you one of those people who have cultivated a culture of male and feminine, a divine masculine and divine feminine balance inside yourself? That is part of what we are growing to more successfully surf these waves, in my view.
I too feel that when emotional responses come up that create a discord in us, that can be experienced as anger or pain or hurt or suffering, that it is the masculine attributes that come to the fore as part of that fight or flight to protect us. And what has happened is, because we have become out of touch culturally with our feminine attributes, many of us then feed into the masculine without the support of the feminine within our own being. So what can we do about that? Again, let's look at a tool. So I think we're up to about tool number 4 now. So tool number 4, here we go. Look, again, this does require just taking a moment for yourself. And I would like to invite anybody who is open to doing this to actually take 5 minutes today to sit quietly. It can be anywhere that is a place that you identify as self-nurturing and self-supporting. It could be sitting in your car. It could be going to a park. It could be anything or anywhere, whatever works for you. But find that space and take 5 minutes to just go there by yourself and get comfortable. Close your eyes and allow yourself just to breathe normally. And as you breathe normally, allow your ears to open to your surroundings. Tune in to whatever is around you, the noises and the space around the noises. And as you do this, just allow yourself to then come back inwards to your own being, bringing your attention back to yourself inwardly. If you would like to, invite your spirit guides, angels, fairies, elementals, God, goddess, source, whatever the language is that you have, ensuring that you request that these be beings of light and unconditional love. Connect in to them and to your own higher self, your own source essence. Now that you've done that, ask and give your permission for your divine feminine to draw in through you and attract your divine masculine to balance with that. It's a really, really simple exercise. And the key part is to give permission for your divine feminine to come and draw in close to you and through you. And then in doing so, attract your divine masculine, your masculine attributes to align with her. And that will begin to create an alchemical change within you that begins to nurture and grow that balance. If you do that 5 minutes every day, you will begin to see changes. Really simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Really lovely. I was just each time when you lead when you invite us into that vibrational space that you so beautifully create, Sue, you can just feel yourself bathing in those frequencies. You're getting bathed in a new, in a resetting frequency that allows that balance to come in. And it's so soothing. It's so soothing, and it's amazing when you talk about just 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes a day can do that.
And that 5 minutes a day can be sitting on the toilet in your office.
Yes, it can.
Because trust me, I've been there. when you're in a life that's got a lot happening,
Yes,
and you don't get space,
yeah,
sitting on the toilet works. I've done it many, many times in my life.
yeah. Yeah, and syncing up with flow, I think on a lot of levels of our being, it's a way to give that to ourselves when otherwise, our mental minds, which often can get into the masculine energy anyway, will tell us we don't have the time. So that's a wonderful way of moving beyond that and knowing that there's always time in the day to take a breath if we're just willing to get creative, like you just said.
Because I think it's really important for people to know and understand that both the divine feminine and the divine masculine are beautiful. They're both meant to be there. It's really just about the fact that we have forgotten to value and encourage and engage with the feminine part of ourselves in a healthy, aligned way. So both are beautiful, both have amazing things to offer. If we have only the feminine, nothing ever happens.
Yes.
If we have only the masculine, we build many things, but they all fall apart.
Yeah.
So by combining the two, you're actually combining space and timelessness with the action of structure. So you're creating timeless structure. And that is the foundation of the planet that we're moving into.
Yes.
So as we go through life and we come across these waves of experience, which are very real, they can be very sudden, simple yet powerful, sometimes incredibly life-changing and instantaneous. Know within yourself that if you are part of one of those experiences, something is shifting within you to take you where you are meant to be. That whatever is falling away because it's not in line with who you are and what you are about to create and what you are already creating. And I know it can be painful. I know it can be distressing. And that's why we've been talking through the tools we've done today to help support you with that transition. But I really, really want everybody to know that at this point on the planet, if you are in an environment where you are aligned with what you are creating, whether it be in your home, in your office, in the sports team you play in, if you're aligned and in tune and resonate with what it is that you are doing together, when these waves come along, you will find that there is a way for you to flow through them. They may be hard, they may be challenging, but because you are in line with what has been created, you will ride that wave.
Mm.
If you are in an environment which is not in alignment with who you are and what you want to create and where you are going, when something comes in, it will feel more like a crashing wave. And that's the universe saying to you that there is something there that is ready to shift. Now, that can be an internal shift within you that will enable you to stay where you are and to keep creating and doing what you're doing. Or it could be the universe picking you up and carrying you to a new destination.
And in all of that, there's the energy of movement. Either way, the change that's occurring in our world and in our own physical bodies and in our lives today is here to create a kind of movement that gets us more aligned with who we really are meant to be, and where we are in more of an experience of ease and peace and grace. Versus, I think you described it so well earlier, Sue, when you were talking about that it doesn't have to be hard and we don't have to do a lot of efforting. But there is this bridge time where we're learning how to move better in that flow and to allow the movement to flow through us, versus get trapped inside us.
Yes, and that's part of the key to transitioning and going with the waves rather than being caught in the waves.
Yes.
So, you know, on an everyday level, I am talking about real life experiences. So I know they're messy.
Yes.
I know that when you're in the middle of them, it's hard to see the light. And sometimes it requires talking to somebody else to get a different perspective. But again, this is why having for yourself some really simple little practical tools you can use to help you create that space, so you can see where the gift lies, where something might be coming to an end that up until this point has been treasured by you. Yet there will be a space there for you to see another direction. Another option is opening up for you. And I really hope this helps people who are listening. I'm very sympathetic. I completely understand and have experienced for myself life change, which is upended and been dramatic, and I've experienced the pain that can come with that. And it's really only because I have been through that I can share with you that there are tools that can help you, and there are ways you can go through it, and you will come out the other side. And when you come out the other side, you will see a whole new world and a whole new life opening up for you in a way that wouldn't have beforehand.
Yes, that was so beautiful. And I was just feeling, as you said, that letting the things go that aren't aligned for us, and that there are these storms that are coming through. But if we can make space, and if we can have the consciousness to give to ourselves in that loving, gentle, compassionate way, and move into that witness observing space that is gentler, we can allow those things that aren't meant for us anymore, that may once have been aligned, but that are no longer aligned, go. And what I find, and I think you've said this, but I just wanted to restate it again, is when that thing that is no longer aligned leaves your life, whatever that is, and as painful as that journey might be, whatever that's new, that is more aligned for you, often can't find a way in the things that are meant for you, the things that are aligned for you, the people you are meant to meet, the partner you are desiring, the job you do want, the income you would like to have. Sometimes when something that's misaligned is taking up space inside us, there's just not the vibrational space for something new to find its way in. And part of the mechanism of these shifts on the planet, in my experience and the guidance that I'm receiving, is to help us now declutter some of those vibrations that are outdated, some of those energies that no longer serve us, some of those activities or relationships or circumstances that no longer fit where we are moving into and being summoned to go, that is much better aligned, but we just can't see it yet. And so there's that feminine aspect coming in to partner with us as we're letting go, as an action step of maybe more the male energy, is allowing that to go and flush out and flow out. That's partly the feminine. There is this faith that also has to, that is wanting to bloom inside us, that wants to come back into our consciousness, that can allow that something better, if we can even affirm that to ourselves, that as this releases, something better and more aligned with who I really am is coming in and finding its way into my life to guide me into something new and even better and brighter. And so I think that, I don't know, for some, it certainly can be painful as something's releasing, but sometimes that prayer of knowing that something even better is coming can also help that kind of inner partnering process, that trusts the process, that as something moves in, as something moves out, something's moving in. It's the synergy of life. It's the flow of life. There's a natural order and there's a natural flow. And I think the universe and the earth shifts and the energies on the planet right now are giving a little extra push to help us let go of the debris that we would otherwise, I don't know if we'd call it be a little lazy about, but how many people on a Saturday morning want to wake up first thing and declutter their house from the last 5 or 10 years? I don't think anybody. I can't think of anybody right now. Right, and we're decluttering our inner house right now of all these vibrations of our childhoods and all these things that we've collected through time, stories that our emotional centers and our mental filters have told us about ourselves. There's a lot in there that we've completely forgotten about, old files that need to really release, so that we can invite this new way of being that's much more centered and happy and fulfilled and more easily attracting the lives we want to live, where we work less and we play more, and we fight less and we enjoy and love more. And there is this, like I think I said, the bridge times that we're in, that just has a healthy dose of respect for what's unfolding inside us, and that we don't have to resist it. We can actually move with it. And I think that's part of what this was the impetus for some of this conversation today, is recognizing these shifts are here, recognizing this movement that's going on is global as well as it's individual. And if we can ride the wave versus resist the wave, we'll have a far easier time of it.
Yes, and that's the essence of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sue. It's always delightful connecting with you. I love just opening ourselves up. That's that feminine side of both of us, where we're willing to see what flows through. We might have a general topic, but we flow with what wants to come through, because whatever it is, it's coming through, for that's what is being summoned in the greater experience of life that all of us on the planet are experiencing. And that includes the human population, all 7 some billion of us, but all sentient life is looking for this greater ease. It's been hard on everyone and everything, this cycle we've been in for so long. And so a blade of grass should not struggle to grow. And we should not struggle in our jobs or in our lives under the pressure of the finances and educational expenses and all the things that we face today. So I think we are in the oneness, just like that blade of grass that just wants to, be seated in the ground and reach for the sun and have it be easy to grow what we already are. And I think that's the invitation on the planet through all these cycles of the storms and the waves that are coming through pretty intensely right now, is to remember ourselves. Maybe that's the metaphor, is just be the blade of grass that knows itself and knows what it's meant to be. And if it can just be allowed to be its organic nature, it will be a supreme a blade of grass, and it doesn't have to effort itself. It just naturally grows. And that's us. And we've forgotten that that's the natural way of the planet, because all of our collective stories would tell us differently. And now it's time to change the story, which means we need to change how we partner with ourselves. We need to change how we partner with the feminine and the masculine. And we need to change how we even begin to partner with each other and really look at each other as another being on the journey, trying to remember itself as whole and as part of the light and as part of a greater unity consciousness that I think many people are ready for on the planet. And it's going to take a little bit of soul work and some willingness to behave differently and respond differently and think differently and perceive differently to help us get there in that coming home process together. So I love every conversation with you, Sue, and I know we will be doing this again. Maybe perhaps a monthly schedule. We'll have to see where the flow takes us. But certainly I enjoy listening and connecting with you, and I know our audience here at Whole Soul School and Foundation very much does as well. So if you are listening to this podcast or watching our video, if you would like to leave any comments for us about a topic that you might like to see us address in the future, please do so. Please visit our website for Whole Soul School and Foundation. You can find a lot of our offerings there. And of course, our podcast with Sue Wells and I for the Mind, Body, Spirit, Fitness podcast that we do. And I would like to just invite you, if you're inspired, please consider making a donation to Whole Soul School and Foundation. It helps us continue to connect with people, continue to make these wonderful conversations and these spiritual educational conversations and this content available to people who are seeking another way, who are seeking another perspective. And we also very much support people and want to bring these messages to people whose lives have been touched by literal incarceration in their lives. So it didn't just manifest from something in their life that was a storm at one point and where they felt limits at some level, but they actually manifested an incarceration experience. And so these messages through Whole Soul School and Foundation are provided to people to start to begin to free themselves from themselves. And so it's a delight to connect with you, Sue. It's a delight to connect with our audience. And we look forward to joining you in another Whole Soul School and Foundation podcast very soon. So we hope you have a fabulous week. And thank you again, Sue. Many blessings.
Thank you so much, Marie. And just as a final note, I would just like to encourage all the listeners, if you do have any questions that have come up for you during this video, please feel welcome to put them in the comments section so that we can respond. And in doing so, that enables other people to see those questions and responses as well. So then it will answer and support not only you, but everybody.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Wonderful. Another beautiful conversation that ripples out and touches many lives beyond what we'll all even know. And that's a beautiful feeling to be part of that creation cycle of sharing this with the world. So I'm so grateful for the time you spend with us, Sue, and the wisdom and the energy that you bring through that invites us into that sacred space in our heart centers. And so thank you. Thank you for that gift.
Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to join with you and to share with people. Thank you.
Yes. Blessings.